Mexican records got the lights down low. Souldisco where the groovy people go. Hit play, let the music flow. Old school beats with a modern glow.
Hello everybody and a very warm welcome back to the latest episode of Hidden Jewels of Soul and Disco. I do hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. In this week's episode we are featuring a cult figure, a soul icon, Leroy Hutson. Leroy Hutson was born on June the 4th in 1945, and his musical influence were mainly from his parents. And very early on he started his own group, the New Tones, with whom he won many talent contests. But let's hear that from Leroy himself.
It's always been very natural to me. My sister and my aunts and uncles were all musically inclined, none of them professionally. And I think I got most of my talent from my dad. My dad he's a natural musician. That's what took me into having early relationships with vocal groups. You know, I started the New Tones while we were in grammar school.
During the late 60s, Leroy studied at the Howard University in Washington, D.C. And during that time, he got in touch with many musicians, which we nowadays call superstars. That changed his mind to become a musician instead of a dentist. And in 1968, while still being in college, he released a single under the name Sugar and Spice, 2 singles to be more exact, and it features the wonderful Deborah Rollins, who was one part of Sugar and Spice. These singles were released on Cup Records, and those singles were In Love Forever, Aha Yeah, and Dreams. In 1969, he wrote with his then roommate Donny Hathaway a song which would become Donny's first hit, the Ghetto.
I spent a year and a half in zoology preparing to go into dentistry. And I was walking across campus one day and I walked past the Fine Arts building and I hear all this music coming from down in the practice rooms downstairs. And something says to me, now this is what you should be doing. And downstairs I go and there's Roberta Flack, there's Herbie Hancock and those sorts of people. So I noticed all these people standing outside one particular room, and it was Donny's room. He fascinated us all. And we became great friends. I introduced myself, and ultimately we became roommates. A lot of wonderful things happened as a result of that. We wrote a lot of really great music together as a result of that, yeah.
Experience, man. If we had the time, I really wish we had the time to expound on how the song itself came down and the things that were involved with how the song was derived, but it really take some time. It was a spiritual situation, it really was. One of the geniuses of these times, man. I think I can truly speak to that because, like you say, I roomed with him, man, and I got to know him very well. And I'm thankful for that, having had that opportunity because it was really an experience, man. Mm-hmm. I can truthfully say that I learned as much from being around and with Donny as I did in school itself. Well, with two creative people, or with creative people in general, there's always going to be some kind of conflict because I'm feeling that what I'm thinking is right, and he might be feeling what he's thinking is right. But then there's always the respect for each other's talent, so we never really ran into very much a problem because if I would suggest a line or a certain rhythm to Donny, he would be open to it, and I would likewise, so it worked out very well. We really were a rare writing team, and I hope that one day we can get back to that.
A further collaboration between Donny and Leroy never happened again, due to the fact that Donny Hathaway passed away on January the 13th in 1979. But let's get back to the late 60s, early 70s. At that time, Curtis Mayfield was leaving the Impressions and they needed a replacement. During his close connections to Donny Hathaway, Donny suggested that Leroy would be a perfect replacement. And the reasons for this are, in my humble opinion, not just the fact that Leroy fit into Curtis' closely.
Donny met Curtis somehow. I don't remember exactly how he did, but Curtis came to campus. Donny never graduated college. He left in his senior year to go become Curtis's musical director. And as it happens, when Curtis made the decision to leave the group, Donny put my name forward. The thing that was most natural was the fact that he and I are basically the same size and I could step into his uniforms. And our first gig was in Central Park, New York, with thousands of people. It was a daunting task, but it worked out. I ended up staying with them for almost 3 years, and it was a wonderful experience.
In 1971, Leroy released his first album with the Impressions, and it was called Times Have Changed. And after around 2.5 years with the Impressions, after extensive touring and recording, Leroy decided that times have to change for him too, as he became a solo artist and left the Impression. And the result of his first album with the help of Curtis Mayfield was Love, Oh Love, and here it is in all of its 70s glory. It featured the single So In Love With You. His follow-up album was in 1974, The Man. And in 1975 he released Hutson, what would become my favorite Leroy Hutson album ever. It included the songs All Because of You and Lucky Feller, and once again in its 70s glory.
I love Hutson. I mean, the Hutson album I really thought was really done well, and all the components came together.
The follow-up to this album was the Free Spirit Symphony Feel the Spirit in 1976. In 1976, also Hutson 2 was released, and there's a very interesting backstory to that album.
Together well, but Hutson 2, believe it or not, was not supposed to be. Curtis's partner, who owned the label, he had to give something to Warner Brothers, so he actually pieced that all together. A lot of those were my work tracks. It wasn't supposed to be. Hutson 2 has no picture on the front because we were on the road.
In 1978, he released Closer to the Source. And once again, I want to show you the cover. There's not just the music, which is absolutely fantastic, but also look at this man. It's absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. This one was followed by Unforgettable in 1979, Paradise in 1982, and his last album, Soothe You, Groove You, in 2009. Actually, Leroy wanted to continue to give his album numbers, but that, as you can see, never happened.
Well, in trying to categorize and come up with a title for this particular album, I found that in listening through the music that I decided to include in it, that I really don't want to categorize it. I don't want to give it a title, and nor do I want to do it with subsequent albums. So I feel that to use just my last name, to use the logo and use a continuing succession of Roman numerals, like the next album will be Hutson 3 and 4 and so on, then people will be able to relate to that, I think.
Between the late 70s and 80s, Leroy didn't stop to be involved in the music business. Actually, he wrote and produced for the likes of, and I'm just giving you a short list, otherwise we would be sitting here for hours. We have the wonderful Roberta Flack, Linda Clifford, Arnold Blair, The Natural Four, Voices of East Harlem, just to name a few. Why Leroy Hutson never became a household name like Roberta Flack, like Donny Hathaway or Curtis Mayfield himself, is unbeknownst to me. He has a fantastic voice, is a fantastic songwriter and musician. You have to consider, if you have a musical degree, at least back in the day, you had to play at least a variety of instruments, and he was just a fantastic musician. And he wanted to be involved in the production process up to the point till the music is on the hot wax, or on the wax if you want to call it that way. Therefore, he had to learn which instruments do fit in there, which musicians are good for this part or that part, and he was totally involved with this.
Well, I'm really trying to develop my talents to the point where I can conceive like a song idea and carry it all the way through to up till the time it goes to wax, which it involves quite a bit. I mean, that even includes conglomerating the musicians, getting together the fellas to give me a certain kind of feeling for a certain kind of song. I've learned that different musicians play well on different kinds of songs, and who not to use on that and who to use on this. And there's an awful lot involved with the recording in that people don't get to see normally. There is an awful lot involved.
If you are looking for the original pressings of his albums, they are out there and they are available. Not too pricey. Once again, depending on the condition, but most of the time you'll find them between $20 to $50 or euros. Also, Acid Jazz released some material from his catalog, and I promise you, give Leroy a chance if you haven't heard of him yet, if you don't know about his music. You'll find his music on Spotify, on YouTube, and of course on vinyl. I promise you, you won't be disappointed with Leroy Hutson. And up to this day, he's still touring, he's still making appearances. I wasn't fortunate enough to see him yet. I do hope that this might have happened in the near future, but once again, check Leroy Hutson out. If you like that episode, I also recommend that you check out the playlist appearing here, and I catch you on the next one.
I would never in 1,000 years have imagined this, when I was producing this stuff, that 4.5 decades later, there would be people still enjoying this music. It's so amazing to me to hear that what I did so long ago has had influences on people like this. And I'll never take it for granted.